Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with another classic pay-per-view review as nominated on by my Patreon backers. This week is a doozy, folks. In honor of the Halloween season and spirit, what's more terrifying than WCW circa 2000? It's only Halloween Havoc 2000, folks. October 29th, Las Vegas, Nevada at the MGM Grand. This show is nominated to me by Cam Wilson. Cam, thanks so much for the pick here. This show is, of course, taking place during the dying days of WCW. A lot of just chaos when it comes to the booking. Lots of things that look like they were thrown against the wall to try and stick. We are seeing the rise of Scott Steiner in the main event scene, while Booker T is trying to secure his legacy as a main event player. But meanwhile, we have a bunch of crazy shit going on with mid-carders and people of the lower card variety. Very emblematic of that Vince Russo style of booking in which everybody gets a storyline. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it doesn't work out so well, and this show has a lot of examples of both. The show opens with a terrifying video package. I was not prepared for some of the creepy ass imagery that we saw in this opening video package here. The very top of the show says it's sponsored by WCW Backstage Assault for the N64, so great, we're off to a terrific start. And really the branding for Backstage Assault is everywhere here. It's on the canvas in the corners, it's on the apron skirts all around. And while we're talking about the apron skirts, can we talk for a minute about the Halloween Havoc logo for this year? I know that Vince Russo tried so many ways to replicate the magic of his time in WWF by referring to this now as sports entertainment in WCW, which seems like blasphemy coming from WCW, and copying a lot of the same elements that he tried to do as a writer in WWF. But do you have to be so crass as to rip off the scratch logo when you have the Halloween Havoc thing here? If you just look at the red line and the scratchy letters, it just comes to me off as so obvious. That's what they're trying to accomplish here. We open up with a three-way dance for the WCW Tag Team Championships as the Boogie Knights, Disco Inferno and Alex Wright, and the Filthy Animals, an unmasked, boyish-looking Rey Mysterio and Billy Kidman, take on the champions Jindrak and O'Hare of the Natural Born Thrillers. This is not the last time you'll be seeing the Natural Born Thrillers in this show, folks. Not the last time you'll be seeing them in this first hour. Anyway, Mysterio unmasked looks absolutely ridiculous here. Of course, he had his mask taken off. I believe it was in late 99, if not early 2000. But man, it was like the wrong decision to unmask him here because he looked like a toddler. It did not work out well for him. The best thing that he did for his career was putting the mask back on. I know it's like sacrilege in Lucha Libre to put the mask back on after you lost it, but no, believe me, his bank account says otherwise. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago that we had like big guys wrestling cruiserweights in just open competition, but this is, I think, one of the best examples of that kind of thing where you had these contrasting styles. Like Jindrak and O'Hare are big dudes, but they're still very athletic and very quick and nimble, and the way they're tossing around these cruiserweights like Kidman and Mysterio is so fun to watch. I miss that kind of action in like WWE today. We don't get that anymore because they've totally segmented off the cruiserweights from everybody else. But I miss that style. I wish we went back to more stuff like what we see here in this opening contest. And really, I think this match is probably like the best you'll see in the entire show in terms of like not necessarily the star power, but the athleticism and the spots they're doing and the story they're telling. It's just like, I think it's just this is the pure goodness in this match here. The commentary absolutely sucks here. You got Mark Madden, Tony Schiavone, and Stevie Ray doing commentary here. I believe Mark and Stevie are competing for who has the loudest shirt. My money's on Stevie. Stevie spent a lot of this show in general, especially this match, really trying to get over this one specific catchphrase.
The double bill upside down. My God! My God! My God! My God! My God! The best athlete! My God! My God!
And I mentioned in my Super Brawl 2000 review how bad Mark Madden was at commentary. It does not get better as the year goes on, because he was terrible in February, somehow gets worse in October. He's making the stupidest German jokes about Alex Wright.
Set him down hard, and here comes the missile drop kick from Alex Wright. Achtung! And he landed on Disco to boot. He looks like a Luftwaffe pilot.
Some notable spots in this match for me are at one point Mysterio goes for a Bronco Buster, but he's cut off with this big double foot to the crotch. That's not Dick Kick City, that's Dick Pulverized City. Then later in the match, Alex Wright, I think, tries to go to, like, he's going to clothesline Mysterio, and I believe the spot was supposed to be Mysterio ducks and vaults Alex Wright outside of the ring, but he just basically runs into and then through Mysterio out of the ring, and Mysterio doesn't really sell it. He just kind of like gets hit by Alex Wright, and Alex just keeps going through to the outside of the ring. By the end of this match, everybody is getting their shit in, and it looks fantastic. The match ends when Sean O'Haire hits the Shanton Bomb onto Disco Inferno. They retain the championships. And, you know, I think this, like I said, this is the best match of this whole show, which is a terrible way to start things off. If this is the best match and there's a lot more to go here, we're on a bad trajectory. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars. Like I said, I love the style contrasts here. The big guys who are athletic versus the cruiserweights who are even more athletic, and they're lightweight. You can throw them around easily. It's great. It was a good match. It was a great match, but not as good as the announcers put it over. I mean, you hear Stevie Ray and Mark Madden and Konnan, who by the way is guest commentating on this match as well. They are just gushing about this match. They're like putting this over as if it's the second coming, which, okay, it was a good match, and yes, this deserves all the praise it gets in Halloween Havoc 2000, but I mean, not at the level that these guys are gushing over it. So we're only one match into this pay-per-view, and already the production, the stacking, the arranging of this show is flying off the rails, because what you have here is Konnan, who's doing commentary in the opening match to support Kim and Mysterio. He gets up and they get stomped to death by the Natural Born Thrillers. AWOL, formerly The Wall and is now a member of Misfits in Action, runs out to save Konnan for reasons. Then out comes Reno, the Hardcore Champion, and we have the Hardcore Championship match, Reno defending against Sergeant AWOL. So basically, Sergeant AWOL comes out before his entrance officially happens, and let's talk about Reno for a second. I mean, this is a guy who I think had a very unique look in the Natural Born Thrillers, but then like when he got to WWF, when the contracts were all bought out and the invasion and everything, he only lasted there for like maybe a week before he was eventually like let go or put down to developmental hell or something. He was never a player in the invasion angle or anything like that, even during the infancy of the WCW invasion. This match is non-stop, this hardcore mayhem. Think of like any stereotypical hardcore match that you saw like around this time across WCW and the WWF. And it's kind of like that. It's everyone hits each other with every weapon they can possibly find. Nobody sells anything. There's nothing going on in the ring. It's all outside the ring. They go to the backstage area. At one point, AWOL grabs this very obviously fake looking plastic computer monitor. It's like hollow or something, some computer monitor. And he tries to throw it at Reno, but Reno ducks. At one point, AWOL picks Reno up for like what I think is like a shitty looking flapjack or suplex, but he just like tosses him up, and Reno lands super awkwardly on this like reinforced table. It's not a gimmick table. It does not break. It looks like a terrible spot. It is a pretty fun hardcore match. This is the best way I can describe it. Like I said, you know, there's no psychology to it. There's no actual wrestling. It's just fighting each other like you would see in a bar or some stereotypical hardcore match. You know, you throw logic and storytelling and psychology out the window in a match like this and just kind of like sit back and enjoy it for what it is. And for a hardcore match of this kind, it was actually pretty entertaining. I think what did Reno in as a competitor was his finisher looks like shit. Because the roll of the dice, like if you look at it from a distance, it looks like a cool move. Reno just turns around and basically takes a huge bump and takes all the force and impact of the move onto his back. The guy taking the move takes none of it. And so he gives AWOL 2 roll of the dice, 1 on a flat table on the floor, and that's how the match ends. He retains the championship that way. And like again, looking at it, it's like it didn't look like he hurt AWOL at all. It looks like he hurt himself, yet somehow he's able to get up and pin AWOL to retain. I give this one 1.5 stars. Immediately after this match, the Natural Born Thrillers all come out and assault AWOL, and then the rest of the Misfits in Action come in to make the save. And here's where things even get weirder. It's a very weird production choice to have these 2 segments, these 2 matches back to back with members of the Natural Born Thrillers, then immediately go to an unrelated package, this pre-recorded thing backstage with the Natural Born Thrillers from earlier in the day, as the graphic suggests, even though what they and Shane Douglas are talking about in this package makes you believe this happened only minutes ago, because it referenced when Jindrak and O'Haire beat up Konnan.
Jindrak, I want to thank you guys, man. The way you took out Konnan earlier tonight, man, I couldn't believe it.
So after you get 2 straight matches with Natural Born Thrillers involved, followed by this pre-taped video, which also features the Natural Born Thrillers, and it takes place seemingly in between those 2 matches, even though no one is showing signs of fatigue or having wrestled or the fact they're teleporting essentially. We then go to a replay from last week's Thunder when Goldberg knocks himself the fuck out on the corner post when he goes to spear a member of Kronik in the corner. Goldberg is scheduled to face Kronik in a 2-on-1 handicap match tonight at the pay-per-view, but Kronik gets there first and alerts the Nevada Athletic Commission that Goldberg is hurt and should not be cleared to compete. This is a thread you will see repeating itself throughout the night. So then after all that stuff, we then go to another match featuring the Natural Born Thrillers. It's the perfect event. Chuck Palumbo and Sean Stasiak taking on the MIA, the Misfits in Action. It's Lieutenant Loco, Chavo Guerrero, and Corporal Cajun, Lash LaRue. This impromptu match was made as a result of the post-match beatdown on AWOL we just saw. So show. The booking committee is like just throwing all these matches, the natural born thrillers, fast and loose here. Like in the first 3 matches, we've got like this overload of this one specific stable. And the MIA, by the way, I'm watching this on the network, and they have like the worst dubbed over music I've seen. Between like all the WCW shows I've been watching this year, like the dubbing for the songs they use are just some of the worst, most out of place things. If it sounds out of place, it usually is, because the MIA's theme, well, not great originally, the dubbed over version is like 100 times worse. It's basically like Dusty Rhodes' American Dream theme, which works great for Dusty, but not for the MIA. Again, giving credit where it's due to the lower mid-card people on this show, and I like I said, the stacking of this show and the fact they've got so front-loaded with this one or maybe 2 stables involved is way overkill. I hated that part and it took me way out of just the enjoyment of the show. I was like, wow, we're seeing a lot of natural born thrillers here. Let's try and pace ourselves. Be that as it may, the match itself I think was one of the better ones tonight. The crowd was really into it. I love this one counter that Chavo did. He was in a military press and counters into a facebuster. You don't see that every day. The match eventually ends with an inadvertent big boot by Palumbo to Stasiak. Chavo hits the Tornado DDT to win the match for MIA. Again, really good match for an impromptu match that, you know, wasn't like that long. It was still a very entertaining one. I give it 2 stars out of 4. Get a good enough match. Crowd's hot for it, but what a clusterfuck of a way to set this match up. Up next, mixed tag team action as Shane Douglas, the franchise, with his valet, Torrie Wilson, taking on Konnan and Tygress, who is a former Nitro girl. This was one of the hallmarks of Vince Russo as Booker in WCW, was to give the Nitro girls characters and storylines and feuds, and God forbid, even matches. This was supposed to be a mixed tag team match with Konnan, as established in the first segment, was being hurt. He was hurt after being stomped to death by the natural born thriller. So the whole question is, can he make it out there and compete in this thing? Mark Madden, during the entrance for Tygress, calls Tygress a rat, which, Jesus Christ.
I think it's crystal clear now what went down, don't you? What a wreck. Speaking of rats, here comes Tygress, I think.
So Tygress said she's going to fight the 2 of them by herself. She gives a bad arm drag to Torrie Wilson and some even worse stomps. Konnan does come out to make the save, but he's still selling the injuries until he does his rolling thunder clothesline, other things with absolutely no ill effects, with no pain. Poor Shane and Konnan, by the way, because as much as I rag on Konnan for not selling in this match, I feel bad for the both of them for having to work around 2 very untrained partners here. They cut to a shot of Torrie Wilson in the middle of Konnan's hot tag on Shane, and maybe I'm wrong here. I watched it back a few times to make sure, and even I questioned myself. But if you look back and see read Torrie's lips, I swear to God she's saying "what the fuck" in the middle of Konnan's hot tag. Maybe she's not saying it, but it certainly looks like that's the case. Maybe it's bad lip reading on my part. Tygress motions for the Bronco Buster onto Torrie, but Torrie pulls Charles Robinson, the referee, in front of her well before Tygress starts running, and then does the move onto him anyway. Like there's clearly a point where she sees Charles there and does the move anyway, yet she still apologizes to him for doing the move. Like, you know, this happened, a spot just like this happened in my review of Lockdown 08, when it was Peyton Banks and Bobby Roode taking on Booker T and Sharmell, where, you know, Peyton's gonna slap Sharmell, but Sharmell ducks, and Peyton has all day to see that she's not there anymore, yet still slaps Bobby Roode. The same basic thing happened here. And you know, the fact that it's been this kind of thing has happened in 2 mixed tag matches I've reviewed, I think is mere coincidence. I don't care if it's men or women doing it in whatever kind of match. When you see a spot like that happen, when like there's this clear moving out of the way and the guy who's doing the move or the gal who's doing the move is still doing it, even though like realistically you see that they should be able to stop themselves, that is like the worst kind of spot. Shane drops Konnan onto the ropes and he very gently feeds his arm to Torrie, who hits him with the franchise. Torrie goes to cover Konnan, but Tygress breaks the pin. How in the hell is this match still going? Konnan and Tygress eventually hit Shane with a double face buster. Konnan covers Shane and wins the match for his team. This was an ugly match that did not get any prettier as it went on, and it went on way too long. I give this match 1/2 star. So now in the 2 Shane Douglas matches I reviewed on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review, both here and in Barely Legal in 1997, Shane Douglas has been involved in half-star matches, which is unfortunate because I like Shane Douglas. I think he's a great worker, he's a great talker, but for some reason in these sample sizes I've been given with him, it has not been so good, and we're not done with Shane Douglas yet on this night. Ugh. The DNA match between Ric Flair and Buff Bagwell. This was really the high point of one of the most infamous, controversial, what have you, storylines that WCW was doing at the time, with Vince Russo at the head of writing. At or shortly after New Blood Rising, it was revealed that Stacy Keibler was pregnant, and so she and David Flair were going to have a shotgun wedding because they were dating on camera at the time, and I think at the time they were also dating off camera as well. But Stacy reveals, "Oh, David, you're not the father." So the candidates, the potential candidates for the father of Stacy's child, were going to be Buff Bagwell, Vince Russo, naturally, or even Ric Flair, perhaps the father of David, was going to be the one who had impregnated Stacy Keibler. So David was on this mission to try and find out who the father was going to be. He was collecting DNA samples from other wrestlers, and finally we come to this match, a DNA match, which is essentially first blood. If you bleed, you lose. Only the difference is David has this like DNA testing kit with him that he comes to the ring with. Mark Madden says this is like Magnum and Tully, only with the slide kit. Mark, now is not the time to be invoking the names of the past greats. David is doing all of Rick's classic spots in this match. He's got the turnbuckle flip, the Beal off the rope, the flare flop. Even his pre-match promo, when I heard it, kind of gave me chills because the way he delivered it and the inflections in his voice and his tone sounded so much like a young Ric Flair. It was crazy. And yes, obviously, I know David is Ric Flair's son, but not very often do, you know, the sons of wrestlers sound like their fathers, but he sounded so close to him, it was uncanny.
It's pretty obvious that gigolo piece of crap, Buff Bagwell's the father. And when I beat him tonight, I'll have the blood to prove it.
Buff decks Flair in the head with a steel chair. Buff does his little dance, which I'll admit I did a couple of times when I was playing cosmic bowling with friends in middle school. And whenever I hit a strike, I did the Buff Bagwell dance. I'm not ashamed to admit it. So David Flair is bleeding. He loses the match. Out comes Lex Luger to celebrate with Buff, but then in a surprise swerve, Lex turns on Buff Bagwell and busts his mouth open in the process. That allows David to collect the DNA on the slide kit and bring it to the lab kit, to the lab techs backstage. And as he's doing that, a nice little bit of a overlapping of storylines, in walks Goldberg, who's still feeling the effects of his concussion. So I'm going to give this match 1 star. It wasn't a pretty match. It wasn't a particularly long match. They put us out of our misery fairly soon with it. And here's the whole thing. So David does all this work to get the DNA, and then Stacy Keibler finally comes out. She was gone for a couple of months at this point. She finally comes out, and it's revealed, oh, sorry, I wasn't actually pregnant after all. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's how the whole angle ended. In a battle to determine who will become the commissioner of WCW, we have a kickboxing match as Ernest Miller alongside Ms. Jones, whoever that is, takes on Mike Sanders with Palumbo and Stasiak. Are you ready for some more natural born thrillers? Are you sick of these guys yet? Mike Sanders, who is the cruiserweight champion at this time, his nickname is Above Average, which is like the shittiest nickname you can give a wrestler. He's like, oh, he's just passable. Push this guy. Sanders, who is the most forgettable member of Natural Born Thrillers, is just getting destroyed by Ernest here, who of course is a former karate champ, 3-time world karate champion, folks. He does not get one shot in on Ernest Miller and is continually getting knocked down, still manages to keep getting up, and you see Stasiak and Palumbo on the outside arguing over whether or not to throw in the towel. They start fighting after round 2, and then Shane Douglas comes back to try and break things up, because we saw, as it was established, the seeds were being planted in that backstage segment earlier with the Natural Born Thrillers and Shane Douglas. An alliance might be formed here. At round 3, the referee is distracted and Shane Douglas hits Miller with a chain. Ernest barely answers the 10 count. The round is over, but the bell rings late. There seems to be some confusion here. Miller is fighting Shane on the outside while Sanders is still in the ring. The referee starts round 4 and counts Ernest Miller out, so Sanders wins the match by countout and becomes the new WCW commissioner, a title he would hold on to until the Sin pay-per-view in January, when he lost it back to Ernest Miller. I give this match 1/2 star. Once again, the curse of Shane Douglas just ruins this match. Again, it's not really his fault, but just the whole match in general is shit, and I think this is the last time we'll see the Natural Born Thrillers get involved in something in this show. Again, I like the idea of the Natural Born Thrillers. I'm not saying these guys are bad. I'm saying that the way they booked them on this particular night was soup's overkill and just didn't really play to their strengths. We go to a backstage promo with Kronik where they say that if Goldberg can't compete tonight in their handicap match, he will lose via forfeit, the undefeated streak will be lost, and he will be out of WCW. And here's the thing though, Goldberg lost a match, a no DQ match to Scott Steiner at Fall Brawl the previous month, so what undefeated streak are they talking about here? Clearly it's not the first undefeated streak, the 178-0 or whatever, when Goldberg had his first push. So what are they talking about? And if he lost at Fall Brawl, how big can the streak possibly be? They say by the end of the night you realize it's a 13-0 streak, which like, that's the streak that's so coveted, that's just what they're talking about. Don't even talk about the streak anymore, just talk about the fact that if you beat Goldberg, he's going to be out of the company. That's all you gotta say. We have a grudge match up next between Vampiro and that 70s guy Mike Awesome. These guys had a match back in September when Awesome did the Awesome Bomb to Vampiro outside of the ring through the table. That took Vampiro out for a little bit, and so this is kind of their rematch. Somewhere, really, the story of Mike Awesome in WCW is a fascinating one, and one that I would like to talk about more in detail in a long-form review. But I mean, just look at this guy, because somewhere between April, when he debuted for WCW, and October, when this happens, in the same year, he goes from being a badass ECW champion who, you know, caused such a huge stir by taking the belt with him to WCW and not dropping it until later, later to becoming the fat chick Thriller, then that 70s guy. The 70s guy gimmick came about like that's the previous month, basically. And then this is, a continuation of that. Awesome had theorized in interviews after the fact that the reason he was given these lame gimmicks, he thinks it's because he's like a distant relative of Hulk Hogan, and Vince Russo and Hulk Hogan had heat, so this was him being punished because he was a relative. But look, considering all the other shitty gimmicks that were going on with people who weren't related to Hulk Hogan at the time in WCW, being a blood relative probably had so little to do with it, it's ridiculous. Before the match, Vampiro cuts a promo saying that, hey, Mike Awesome, you're fighting for the World Championship tomorrow on Nitro. Why don't you put that title shot on the line in this match tonight? Mike Awesome accepts, and they start brawling. This immediately turns into essentially a Falls Count Anywhere match when it was never billed as such. Even Stevie Ray correctly points out on commentary, hey, why are they using weapons here? Like, whoever said this is a hardcore match? Good on you, Stevie. That's why you're the better man in the commentary team over Mark Madden. They go up to the crowd and do some fighting, and at one point a fan jumps out of his seat and lunges and headbutts Mike Awesome in the back or the shoulder. Very bad idea, because everyone immediately descends upon him. Mike Awesome beats him up, Vampiro beats him up, security gets him. It is not a good look. This is one of the funniest examples of karma against a fan I've ever seen. That's why fans, you shouldn't ever touch the wrestlers. Let that PLS into you. They go back down to the ringside area, they're grabbing weapons from under the ring, and you see smoke billowing out from under the ring, and it's never explained as to why, because that happens a couple of times in this show where you see just smoke coming out from underneath, and it's never explained. There's never a payoff to that. Awesome hits Vampiro with a sit-out powerbomb on the floor, to which somehow Vampiro kicks out of that, but Awesome's not done because they get on the top rope, and then Awesome hits a powerbomb to Vampiro from the top rope in the middle of the ring. Jesus Christ, what a bump. He covers Vampiro, he wins, and that's all she wrote. I give it 1.5 stars. It's just a basic kind of Hoss battle with some impressive spots by Awesome here, and definitely you got to give Vampiro kudos for the bumps he took. The one on the floor and then the one in the middle of the ring from the top rope, the powerbomb. That looks scary as hell. I would never take that move. I don't know anyone who would. It's just all the points to Vampiro for that one's, 1.5 stars for me. A handicap match for the U.S. Championship, or should I say the Canadian Heavyweight Championship, as Lance Storm, the champion, and his partner Jim Duggan take on General Hugh G. Rection of the Misfits in Action, otherwise known as Hugh Morris. Yes, folks, the unthinkable happened the previous month when Jim Duggan turned his back on the US of A and joined Team Canada. Say it ain't so, Hacksaw. How could you? So this is kind of the blow-off to the feud between MIA and Lance Storm, who, by the way, 2000 was really his year. He had such a huge push in WCW, almost from the get-go, because he went from ECW to WCW, and he won the US Championship, the Cruiserweight Championship, and the Hardcore Championship within the span of about a month, and gave them all Canadian-sounding names. And then, I think he eventually distributed the Hardcore and the Cruiserweight titles to different people, to Elix Skipper and Car Oulet, I believe, was who he gave them to. More of the misadventures of Mark Madden on commentary. I mentioned this before in my Super Brawl review, that Madden was kind of like a poor man's Jerry Lawler. He tried so badly to be like Jerry Lawler on commentary, but at least when Jerry Lawler said perverted, skeezy stuff, he said it in kind of a charming kind of way. He had a turn of phrase, or used puns, or some kind of play on words to make things sound less awful than they were. But with Mark Madden, he has no such ability with words, and it's perfectly laid bare by the way he describes Major Guns.
Big prize. Look at her. Wow. Bend over, baby. She's the big prize in tonight's match.
The referee gets knocked down, and primetime Elix Skipper gets on the apron, but Major Guns knocks him off with the Canadian flag. Storm gets out of the ring and chastises Major Guns, who, by the way, her independence is on the line in this match. I forgot to mention as well. If Hugh G. Rection wins, then Major Guns would be free and back with the MIA here. So there's that going on the outside. Duggan goes to hit Rection with the 2x4, but Rection sees it coming, hits Duggan with the big move, and hits him then again with the no laughing matter moonsault. Barely. He barely hits him with it. And he finally pins Duggan to win the match. He is the new U.S. champion. The title is back in the good old USA. Major Guns is no longer affiliated with Team Canada. Everybody happy. I give this match 1.5 stars. It was, it was not a bad match. It was not a good match. It was just a match. And Tony Schiavone looks so fucking done on commentary here. Up next, Sting versus Jeff Jarrett. On paper, it sounds like a really good match, but the execution is absolutely horrid. In the build to this, Jeff is criticizing Sting and saying Sting has no heart. He's lost his heart and his passion for professional wrestling. So Sting basically, it's kind of gut check time. He has to prove something to Jeff Jarrett. And this whole build includes a promo where Jarrett is dressed up as Surfer Sting, which is actually pretty entertaining. This was kind of Jarrett's shtick for a time in WCW, where he would parody his people he was feuding with. He parodied Sting here. I forget if it was before or after this, it was probably before this, where he parodied Dusty Rhodes, put on the fat suit and talked with the lisp and everything. If you will, the fruit of my loins, if you will. This wasn't so much a match as it was a parade of classic Stings. This is very reminiscent of Halloween Havoc 1990 when Sting was fighting Sid Vicious, and then Barry Windham comes out as a fake Sting to take the fall for the real Sting. That's a whole confusing bunch of bullshit. But they kind of like, it really harkens back to that period here, because you've got this endless barrage of like just random dudes dressed as Sting through the years. You got Surfer Sting, you've got the Sgt. Pepper Sting, you've got like the first Crow Sting, you got Wolfpack Sting. There are like 3 different Crow Stings in this whole thing. And I don't know who any of these guys are, with the exception of one of them. They all have pretty good looks, so I was like, oh, it's kind of cool to see these guys like build and everything, kind of get their shot here. Again, they all get beat up. They all get dragged up to the stage by Sting. He takes them one by one to the stage to hit them with a Scorpion Death Drop. Kind of repetitive stuff. They have their Jarrett and Sting have a bit of a mini match at this point once he disposes of the first few Stings. One of the Stings comes out through the canvas when Sting's going for the Scorpion Deathlock, but he's quickly disposed of. The lights go out. Another Sting comes down from the rafters. This guy's like a midget compared to the other Stings for some reason. Real Sting plows the fake Sting through the announce table with the Scorpion Death Drop. The table disintegrates. He goes back into the ring, puts the Deathlock on Jarrett, but the Sting from earlier who came out through the ring hits Sting with the guitar. Real Sting doesn't sell it. He lays out the fake Sting, and then Jarrett hits Sting with another guitar. There's a lot of Sting references here. Just bear with me here. So Jarrett hits the real Sting with a second guitar shot. That knocks Sting down for the 1, 2, 3. Jeff Jarrett wins this match, and I feel like Sting has, like, you know, for a guy with as much loyalty and ability in the ring and how over he is, man, he put up with a lot of shit in WCW, and it didn't get much better in TNA, and it didn't get much better in WWE, did it? I'm gonna give this match 1/2 star. What a convoluted, overbooked bunch of crap this was. WCW Championship on the line as Booker T defends against Scott Steiner, who really catapulted into the main event scene after beating Goldberg at Fall Brawl in that no DQ match. And the whole story here is that Scott Steiner is a madman. He is gone psychotic, beating everybody up with a lead pipe. He's just totally, he's off the page at this point. They've fined him, they've suspended him, but it's done no good. I did love the fact that they covered up the hole that was made in the previous match with Sting and Jarrett with duct tape. I just thought that was so funny to see there. Hearing Michael Buffer doing the ring announcing for this one was cool. Hearing him talk about Medeja as Scott Steiner's most favorite freak is pretty amazing.
He is just put into the ring by his most favorite freak, Medeja.
This match is just emblematic of just the whole vibe of the show, where so many matches just disintegrate into, you know, Falls Count Anywhere or hardcore matches, even though they're not listed as such, they're not billed as such, and the referees don't give a shit, they don't enforce any rules. It's almost like they're booking this show on the fly, don't you think? The match ends when Steiner hits Booker T with a lead pipe. The referee still does not call for the bell. It's like, how much more blatant can you get? How much more will you allow? Steiner grabs Charles Robinson, roughs him up, hangs him upside down at the Tree of Woe. Then Scott Armstrong runs in, the second referee. Steiner takes him out. Then Slick Johnson comes out to finally call the match off and ring the bell. Then he's destroyed by Steiner and the pipe. Steiner lays out Booker T with a chair and the lead pipe again. The match itself was okay. I like both these guys' work, but then once there's devolving into the schmaz and the DQ finish for Steiner, or for Booker T, he wins by disqualification here, 1.5 stars. So that's probably the most generous I could possibly be with a match like this. Stevie Ray, throughout the entire match, goes on and on and on. How about Scott will never be a champion? A guy like him will never be a champion. Scott will become the champion the following month at Mayhem. Now here's your real main event of the evening, Goldberg taking on Kronik. Of course, in kayfabe, this match was pushed to the very end to allow Goldberg to heal up and rest as much as he could before being cleared to compete. He finally is cleared at the very last minute by the Athletic Commission, and Doug Dillinger's giving him shit for it.
Okay, he's good to go. We've cleared him. Good clear. It took you good time.
Goldberg's career is apparently on the line in this match, as is his vaunted unbeaten streak of 13-0. My one observation with Kronik, when I was watching wrestling in 2000, 15 years old at the time, in 2000, and I see Kronik for the first time, my first thought was like, huh, these guys remind me a lot of, like, the way they're being booked reminds me a lot of, like, the APA in WWF, except they make weed references instead of drinking references. That was the only discernible difference I could tell from those two teams. So Kronik at one point in the match pulls out a table from under the ring. Again, why is smoke coming out from under the ring? It's never really explained. They didn't have smoke come out for when the fake Sting came to the ring. That would have been the best time to show the smoke, but we never even got that. So there you go, the smoke had a botch. Brian Clark tries to suplex Goldberg through the table, but Goldberg counters and spears Clark through it. It's a nice table break. Goldberg covers him and gets the 3 count, despite the fact that Clark's shoulders are not actually on the mat. They're just on the table, and he's at an incline. I guess that counts as a 3 count. They're just trying to get the show over with. And apparently, it's elimination rules. I never got that until I saw Clark get eliminated. Is the match over? No, because Brian Adams comes in and tries to shit-can Goldberg, but he's immediately jackhammered, and Goldberg wins the match after eliminating both members of Kronik. The fans at least get to go home happy. You have these terrible matches beforehand with, like, very unsatisfying finishes. At least General Rection goes over, and at least Goldberg goes over and sends the fans home happy. This match gets 1 star. Somehow this is booked better than Sting and Jarrett with the Parade of Stings, in my opinion. My final grade for Halloween Havoc 2000 is a D-. This would almost be one of the worst pay-per-views I reviewed for this segment, if not for those first 3 matches, all of which involving the Natural Born Thrillers and the Cruiserweights, Kidman and Mysterio, and all those guys. Those first 3 matches I thought were, for what they were, the best parts of the whole show. The mid-card actually had a really good chance to shine in that first part of the event. And I think that once those guys got their stuff done, even though it was poorly stacked and poorly arranged, everything else went even worse. And so I'm going to give them credit for that. That's the lone saving grace. Was an opening tag team title match. The hardcore match was just good popcorn eating fun. And then the tag team match with Chavo and Lash LaRue against the Perfect Event. Those were all good matches. Everything else was the absolute drizzling shits. My God, this was like, is there any wonder that the company would go under by March of the next year? So thanks once again, Cam, for nominating this show. It was fun to watch, fun to laugh at, and a lot of fun to talk about here on this segment. If you guys watching this want to help dictate which shows I review in the future, be they good, bad, or somewhere in the middle, go to patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret, become a $10 backer or above, and you will have the opportunity to nominate shows for me to review for this segment in the future. So until then, folks, the next time you'll see me doing the classic pay-per-view review will be in about 2 weeks, and it's going to be in November. Survivor Series season is upon us, so I'll be reviewing Survivor Series 1990. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, comment below, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.